Hi, everybody. My name is Jay Nathan. I am Chief Customer Officer at a company called RYG, which is a community software platform business. And I am part of the Gain, Grow, Retain community. In fact, one of the co-founders of a community called Gain, Grow, Retain, which is a customer success leadership community that we founded just this year in 2020. And wanted to talk to you for a little bit today about Gain, Grow, Retain and how we founded the community, what it's all about, and how we're using it to drive engagement in the customer success space. So really happy to be with you here. I'll be answering some questions at the end of the session. So feel free to type any questions that you have as we go along here. If I'm not hitting a topic that you want to hear more about, we'll have the chance to do that at the end. So thanks for joining and being here with us. So let's jump right in. Community is such an important part of what we are doing today. And I think it's more pronounced than it's probably ever been in 2020. People are spending more time in front of their screens, and it's harder to stand out to your customers, to your prospects, to the people that you want to be in your ecosystem and in your circle. And so we really feel like community is a great way to do that. And I'm going to talk to you a lot today about Gain, Grow, Retain and why we built that community and sort of the impact that we believe it's having, and also how it helps drive our business, frankly. But a community is all about a one-to-many approach and really doing personalized and what I call high engagement with our audiences at scale. And it helps us to go outside of our marketing campaigns and reach into a customer or a membership audience in a way that you don't normally get through just the normal course of your marketing interaction with your customer base. And it's easily scalable because it is one-to-many. The whole name of the game is scale. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. But really the idea here is to engage an audience, make them feel like they're part of something bigger than what we are. Now, how we typically think about doing that is how do we get what motivates the audience that we want to communicate with, and how do we get them engaged in what it is that we're trying to do? Members of a community, it could be your customer community, it could be a thought leadership community. They really are trying to do a few things. They're trying to solve a problem in the moment. They're trying to build their career in some way, or get a certification, or get some kind of education, or they're trying to grow their personal brand and do that through engaging with the broader ecosystem of the domain that they're passionate about and then that they know a lot about. So the big thing that we thought about a lot when we were building the Gain, Grow, Retain community, which I'll talk about more here in a minute, is really what's in it for our members, and how are we sort of pulling them in, and then how are we measuring their engagement to determine whether or not we're actually achieving the goal of helping them achieve their goals. So community is very much like a microcosm of customer success in my mind. But when you get it right, it's actually pretty powerful. So, RYG, we serve a range of customers from, customers with small communities of 100, 200 people, all the way up to communities of 100, 150, 160,000 members. And what we see in the data is that the larger a community gets, the less engagement you get from the people who create and contribute to content. And one of the things I'm going to talk a lot about today is content, because content is really the whole engine behind any community effort, as you'll see. But when you have a small community that's 5,000 members or less, you typically see about 25 to 35% of the members of that community actually engaging and contributing in a meaningful way. As you get much, much larger into the 100,000 plus member range, you're looking at 10%, right? And that's completely normal. But what our job is, as drivers of our communities, is to try to engage as many people as we can in those content creation and content contribution roles in our community. There's always going to be a large percentage of what we call lurkers, whether you're trying to deflect support cases or engage in thought leadership and best practices in the domain that you serve, there's always going to be a lot of people watching and listening, but not necessarily contributing. That's okay too. Everybody is going to have a different community. But we've learned this over the years. And so at RYG, and so sometimes these metrics can be really interesting to look at. But if you don't have a large community, that's okay too. So what we've also learned is that communities can be small, but yet very impactful. One of the best success stories that we have at RYG, it's not a huge community. It's only 100 people, but they have they have an 80% engagement rate from content creators and content contributors. So the people who actually engage in that community and the conversations happening there. So there's more accountability. People feel compelled to contribute. There's less of a bystander effect and diffuse engagement by the users. And ultimately, a small group of influencers can really help keep a community going and engaged. So as you're thinking about your efforts within your business and how community might impact what you're trying to do from a customer success perspective, know that you can start small and you can build. I had a great call with a good friend of ours, Chris Detzel, yesterday, who works for a company called Imperva. And he started from scratch building their community, and they're up to just around 2,000 members now, but it's growing very quickly, and it's providing inordinate value to those 2,000 people. So you can start small, you can grow your community, and it'll be a huge benefit to your business. Now, when you're thinking about how to create community within your domain, the thing that really is important about it is content. And not just blogs, not just an online community with a bunch of posts, not just a podcast, but a lot of different channels for engagement. And I'm going to walk you through how we sort of, I would call it designed. I don't think we designed Gain, Grow, Retain intentionally from the ground up, but as it's evolved over the past 6 to 8 months, we've actually built out a multi-channel strategy that I think is working pretty well for us. But people like to consume content in a variety of different ways. Some people like to listen to podcasts. Some people like to go online and participate in an online community. Some people like to participate in live calls, right? So there's a lot of different ways to engage the community. And what we have found is that using different channels to feed all the other channels and just continue driving the engagement is really a winning formula for what we've been able to do in Gain, Grow, Retain. Now, the other piece of this, and we'll talk about a little bit more, is that consistency is key. So once you define a channel and a program, then really you're looking to make it into a systematic and programmatic thing that is repeatable. At the end of the day, we're trying to create content that really makes a difference to our members and our users, okay? And when we do that, we drive engagement. We help them solve problems. We help them get ideas together that are going to help grow their career, help give them the solutions that they need to really solve business problems within their businesses. The other aspect of the peer-to-peer element of Gain, Grow, Retain and any other community is really making individual connections between community members. And that's been a really powerful piece of what we've been able to do as well with Gain, Grow, Retain, is that people have created friendships. They've created bonds with people that they know can support them from a career perspective. A lot of times they're geographically dispersed, so they're not really in competition with one another. Sometimes they end up working for one another. So there's just tons of career development, career opportunities that come out of any community. And I'm willing to bet, I believe this into my core, that almost any software company, no matter what domain you serve, what kind of users you have, what kind of industry you're in, I believe that almost every industry can get better by having collaboration between the best and brightest minds within that industry. And so, expanding your concept or your idea of community beyond just your users or just your paying customers into really the thought leadership in your domain, I think is such an important and powerful concept. So that's a little bit of background just to give you, an idea about, how we think about community, how I think about community. But I'm going to talk to you now a little bit specifically about a community we call Gain, Grow, Retain. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but once you get it, it comes off the tongue really, really easily. But Gain, Grow, Retain is a community for customer success leaders. You don't have to be a manager or a director or a VP or a chief anything to be part of Gain, Grow, Retain. Leadership does not necessarily mean management, right? But we created Gain, Grow, Retain for people who are leaders in customer success. We have about 5,000 members today. We only launched the community back in March of 2020, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the story of how we did this. But I couldn't go any farther without mentioning my business partner and now my co-worker at RYG, Jeff Brunsbach, who is a major part of this. He and I together sort of developed these ideas and got this thing off the ground just through almost brute force and sheer will earlier this year, as COVID-19 sort of came and began to grip us all. And it's really just taken off and flourished. But I'll go back to the beginning of the story and really how it all started, and really maybe the core concept of community that we really started to latch onto as we built Gain, Grow, Retain is LinkedIn. I'm guessing that everybody listening to this right now is on LinkedIn. There are about 700 million people on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of great conversations that are happening out there. So you've probably noticed over the past 2, 3, 4 years that LinkedIn has gone from being a online resume kind of solution for all of us, which many of us have been on LinkedIn for a decade and a half. And now it's really a social network, right? It's a social media outlet where there's a lot of conversations happening and people who are sharing a lot of detailed knowledge and insights into how they work. So about a year and a half ago, Jeff and I started getting real serious about engaging on LinkedIn. We saw that there wasn't a lot of conversation happening around customer success on LinkedIn on a consistent basis. And so we said, we're going to start engaging in conversations that other people are having, and we're going to also start contributing and creating conversations that people are not yet having. And so we started building a personal presence out there. It allowed us to begin to understand what was going to resonate. We would post a topic. If it got a lot of engagement, we knew it was a good topic. If it didn't get a lot of engagement, that's okay. We knew it wasn't a topic that people were really inspired and passionate about. But at the time, we were running a company called Customer Imperative, which is a consulting firm for B2B SaaS companies, really focusing on the customer success motions. And we were talking about the problems that we were trying to solve with our clients. And so those real life situations and discussions as our inspiration were really, really helpful. As we went along and began down this journey, there were moments in time, and I always remember them as, hey, Jeff, we should do this. Or Jeff saying to me, hey, Jay, we should try to do this. And so once we got active on LinkedIn, the first such idea that came up after that was, hey, we should try to get into podcasting. And so we started a podcast back in 2019, late 2019, late summer of 2019. It really started out as a passion project, and we started to identify people that we wanted to talk to and learn from in our customer success space. So we sought those people out. We recorded a Zoom call with them, and then we published it, did a little bit of post-production editing, and then threw it up on our podcast channel. It was another content outlet for us. So some of the same topics, and by the way, the people that we were beginning to engage with on LinkedIn that were interested and passionate about the same topics that we were, they were our first guests on the podcast. And so our whole idea about the podcast was for it to be an easy conversational thing where we could share thoughts and ideas and what people are actually doing, and then let our listeners be almost a fly on the wall in terms of how they could listen in to the topics that we were discussing and the thoughts that we were having on whatever the subject was. So as you can see, it took a long time for us to really grow this channel. But once we started promoting it earlier this year and really started to double down on on our content and doing more episodes, it really has begun to spike. And you can see sort of the hockey stick kind of curve that the podcast listens are at now. And, we have over 5,000 listens per month, and I fully expect that to be close to 10,000 per month by the end of the year. So, a lot of people think that podcasting is a difficult thing to get into. And when you first walk up to it, it might seem daunting, but just start by recording a Zoom call with one of your top customers. Talk to them about how they're doing their business, what kind of decisions they're making, how have they solved the hard problem, and then share that with the rest of your customers. I guarantee you it will begin to pay off. By the way, having a podcast and other outlets like this is a great way to work alongside of your marketing team in an account-based marketing kind of approach or strategy, where you have key prospects that you see doing interesting things. You can bring them into the podcast, have them talk about what they're doing, and it really sort of builds them up. One of the principles behind our entire community effort is how can we take the members of our community or our customers, right, and put them up on a pedestal so they get recognition. We're building their brand and making them the center of the story that we're trying to tell. It's ultimately about their success, and we're going to show that success off to other people. So, channels and outlets like a podcast can be a very powerful content pillar for any community effort. And when we explain what Gain, Grow, Retain is, we often talk about our podcast as a core pillar of that strategy. So do podcasting. It's great. Where our community efforts really began to take off is back in March, when, we all remember when the lockdowns began to happen. People really started to freak out. I know I was, in trying to figure out, okay, like, what does this mean for our business? What does this mean for our customers? And basically, how are we going to work in this new environment? So at the time, I'll give a shout out to a guy named Anthony Kanata, who probably many of you know, but he's the chief marketing officer for a company called Front. He put a LinkedIn post out that said, hey, I'm going to start a chief marketing officer office hours for the next few weeks. And it was one of those, hey, Jeff, we should try this kind of idea moments. And so we said, hey, Anthony's doing CMO office hours. We should do customer success leadership office hours. It would be awesome. So we decided to do a live call. We committed to doing it for 4 weeks and seeing how it went, and then iterating on it from there and figuring out if we wanted to continue to do that afterward. So the first call that we did was back in March, and we chose a panel. We chose 4 people who were sort of well known in the customer success space. We said, we want to talk to you about how you're dealing with concessions and other kinds of things that we're going to have to offer our clients to keep them with us or to help them through the difficult times that we're about to face here. And so we had the first call. We did it on Zoom. First call, we had 45 people. It was awesome. It was a great, great call. After every call, we decided we're going to ask for feedback. So we sent a survey asking people, how did they enjoy the topic? What did they think of the format? And basically, what was their response? We asked an NPS question. Were they going to be interested in telling others about this? Because we knew that was the way it was going to grow. We got some scores back after that first panel discussion in maybe the mid 70s, low 80s, which we thought was pretty good. But we got some feedback that said it was a great session. We really enjoyed it. However, what we'd like to do is have a little bit more interaction. We'd like to have more discussion on these calls. And so we said, all right, week 2, we're going to change the format. So week 2, we went from 45 people to 75 people. Week 3, by the way, we went to 100 people. Week 4, we went to 150 people. So this thing really started to take off quickly. But after we made that tweak, we removed the panel. Those were all great folks. We had a great discussion, but we actually began facilitating a discussion with all the people who were present on the call, and our scores went through the roof. So after we made that change, our NPS went up into the mid 90s, and it has not left the mid 90s since we did that. So what we do is each week now we choose a topic. It's usually sourced from the community itself. We have an invite that sits on everybody's calendar so they know. And by the way, it's every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. That's CS Leadership Office Hours. So put it on your calendar and join us. We'll share information with you, and you can find it on gaingrowretain.com about how to join these calls if you'd like to. We'd love to have you on and participating with us. But the big thing here was, number one, we experimented with this format. Number two is we asked and then listened to the feedback, both on topics that people wanted to talk about, and then also to the format itself. And we made adjustments very quickly. And then I think the biggest thing is that we found that an interactive medium where we could engage on a one-to-many basis in a live format was just a really, really powerful kind of thing for us. And we quickly noticed that that everybody on these calls wanted more. By the way, we have almost 2,000 people on the list that get these invitations every week to the office hours call. We'd love to have you on there, like I said. So please join us. We have about between 100 and 200 people on this call every single week consistently now. So the live format has been a really important pillar for us. But one of the things that we noticed happening as we were having these conversations is that people began to say, hey, this is a great conversation in office hours every week, but we want to continue the discussion. It's just 1 hour, right? But we want to continue the discussion between those calls every week. And so there was another, hey, we should try this moment. So we said we need to have an online presence where we can set up an online community and have people join that. And then we can take topics that we don't get to or discussions that are popular from the office hours calls and begin to put them online and have people interacting throughout the week between each Thursday call. So we did it. Now, at that point in time, I had known the RYG team for a while. I called my old friend Heather McNair and I said, hey, we're about to launch an online community. Can you help us think through like how we should do this the right way? So the process that we used based on Heather's feedback and really based on RYG's decade of experience building and delivering communities is, number one, we start with early adopters. And that is pick a group of people who are passionate about getting this off the ground and who are also willing to prove the model, prove the format of the community, get engaged, take ownership of it. And also, very, very importantly, coming back to this topic of content, is seed content into the community so that when others begin to join, there's already content there in a draw. And then once we get the early adopter program off the ground and get it moving in the right direction, then build a moderation team who can actually help maintain a high level and a high standard of quality within the community in the different discussions. We don't want people advertising. We don't want people self-promoting. We definitely don't want people bringing negativity into our community. And so our moderator team is really instrumental in making sure that all those things are done the right way. But without this approach and this process, today, now that we're part of RYG, we see it all the time. There are customers who choose not to take this approach when launching a community. And then there are other customers who do choose to take this approach when launching a community. And the difference is stark. It's a lot different kind of experience for a lot of people to show up in a community and have content there, have discussions already going versus not. So the early adopters program was really, really key to us getting this off the ground. So follow that model. It's proven and it works. Finally, to sort of round out our content strategy and our strategy in general with the community, we've begun to create additional programs. And again, this is all sort of centered around content and getting more and more relevant to different groups of members and users within our community. So recently, we just launched something we call the Operational Excellence Series. You see our buddy Ziv was the first presenter in that series. It's probably going to be a quarterly thing, but what we're looking for is people who are going way above and beyond in a particular area of their business that we feel like a lot of people can learn from. So we take those opportunities as they come across in the community. we've launched a similar office hours call for CSM. So if you're a CSM listening to this call and you're not on the leadership or management side, you can join the weekly office hours call for CSMs, and that's on Tuesdays at 11:30. We've had different subgroups formed. So we have a number of participants in the community who work for cybersecurity firms, who do different aspects of cybersecurity technology. They've spun off their own group. It's part of Gain, Grow, Retain, but it's a subgroup focused on very specific problems that they have. We have an operations subgroup. And then probably one of the more important initiatives that we've gotten off the ground is we've got a committee that's really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Gain, Grow, Retain community, but even broader than that, thinking about how do we bring DEI to SaaS and customer success in particular, or across the board. So really exciting things. Again, all of these areas, we treat these as programs. So as soon as we launch something, we think about how do we make it a long-term fixture as part of our community engagement strategy and the content that we're generating. So tie it all together, right? What we're trying to do is build a firm foundation for our customers to drive engagement, our members, our audience, generally speaking, whoever that is for your organization. It could be your users so that you are deflecting more cases and getting more best practices out into the user base. It could be thought leadership, so you're attracting new participants from outside. But communities are going to help you scale. They're going to amplify your business, your brand, and then they're also going to amplify the personal brand of the customers and the team members that you have involved with it. So I can't say enough good things about the benefits that I believe that community brought to my business, Customer Imperative, before we sold our business to HigherLogic. And now I already see those benefits playing out for HigherLogic as a software company who does community. It's a very Inception type relationship here, but super excited about the opportunities and that sort of lie ahead. So you might be asking, what do the Gain, Grow, Retain community members say? We have tons of testimonials like this one from Sherry, which you can read. But the part that I'll pull out of this is that basically she's saying Gain, Grow, Retain has become the first place that I turn when I'm looking for ideas, advice, or general feedback on all things customer success related. Our friend Alex, same sort of sentiment, right? It's an excellent sounding board for ideas and collecting feedback. Whenever we're trying or testing something new at HigherLogic, whether it's our implementation approach or our customer success management team or our education team or our strategic services team or our support team, we're constantly seeking input and guidance and the collective wisdom of the Gain, Grow, Retain community. And that's just where the power comes from. You don't have to invent everything yourself. And a community is a great way to go about sort of fostering that information and that insight. So thank you for listening. We're going to do some Q&A now. So I hope you have some questions teed up about some of these topics. But if you're not a member yet of Gain, Grow, Retain, I would love for you to become one. So you can actually scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you right to gaingrowretain.com where you can create an account and be involved in the largest customer success community on the planet. So thanks for your time and looking forward to taking some questions. So a few questions that came in, and I think I'm just going to read them off here and then have you, or I'll sort of tell you, give you some answers to them. But Scott Bogle asked, how do you overcome the fear of having customers getting together and sharing their dirty laundry? Man, that's a great question. And for us at HigherLogic, we have separate from Gain, Grow, Retain, we have a large customer community as well. It's got about 13,000 members in it. And that's one of the things that does happen from time to time, especially if your product is, any amount old. I think, first of all, there is some security around that. So it's not all publicly open and available, but I sort of look at that kind of feedback as a gift. If customers are airing their dirty laundry, it's actually good opportunity for us to learn. Now we want them to keep it constructive, so we moderate those things, but we also make sure that we're highly participative in those posts, so they can see that people can see that we're listening. They can see that we're sort of responding and reacting to some of the concerns and challenges people have. We might not always have the best answer, but we're just actively engaged. So I look at any engagement as a positive for the most part in either the Gain, Grow, Retain community or our Higher Logic's customer community. So that's a great question. Is there a critical mass of customers you need before you launch a community? I think the answer to this is no. I mean, if you look at one of the examples I shared, we have a really small community of 100 members, and 80% of them are highly engaged. Everybody's the size of the audience that you're working with is going to be different, and as you saw in the metrics up front, the larger your community is, the smaller the actual contributors are going to be. The people who write content, who start new posts, who really drive the engagement of the community. It's going to be a smaller overall percentage, which is fine. But just know that you can start a community with almost any size. I mean, there really is not a size factor on it which determines success. It's really about how you drive engagement. That's how I think about the success of a community. Cool. So Morgan asked, how do you set up a clear distinction between knowledge bases, communities, and support without overloading the customer with outlets? I'm glad you asked that question, Morgan, because we're actually trying to work on that right now and improve our customer experience around that a little bit. The reality is it's a lot. There's a lot of educational resources we want to provide to our clients. There are a lot of different ways that people consume. I know I like small bite-sized pieces of information much more than I like long form content or long training programs. Although we have customers at Higher Logic that love long form training programs and love the interaction of a virtual classroom setting. So we have a lot of options for that. We're actually going to be sort of unifying all that through a single landing page to let you get to all those resources. So there are companies like Zendesk who I think have done a pretty good job of this, and other examples out there that are really good to look at. But hopefully we're going to be one of those examples in the very near future. Eliza asked, what is your experience with building communities for SaaS-based product companies, and what is the right time to build one in terms of company size? Sort of goes back to the earlier question. I don't think there is a right or wrong time to build one. I think as soon as you have users or as soon as you have an audience of people that you want to engage, it's time to start building that community. And really the community goes well beyond just helping them solve their technical problems with your product. One of the most powerful things in my mind about community is it's a way to drive engagement at a whole different level with your customers. So the people who, if you invite everybody into community that are in your user base, the people who are answering the questions, the people who are sort of showing that they know your stuff the most, those are going to be some of your greatest advocates. And you can take them, put them on a pedestal in your community, and actually really enhance your relationship with them and use them to help get your message out. So community to me is very much a hybrid of marketing and customer success, really all wrapped into one. And the longer I'm in this business, the more I think they're sort of combined at the hip anyway. So I hope that helps answer that question, Eliza. Samantha asks, do you invite prospective customers to your community events? How do you do that intentionally in partnership with sales? Absolutely. And I've been in software companies for almost 20 years now. And having prospective customers at your events is a great way to show the prospective customers the passion of your user community and how engaged you are with your user community. They're really, really good sales tools. So if you're an early stage company and you haven't, or you're just starting to pull together your first events, be them virtual or someday again in person, I would say absolutely invite your prospects. That's key. And community or otherwise, yes, bring them in. Again, I look at our audiences as our customers, period. Some of them pay us today. Some of them may not pay us yet today, but they're all our customers or our target market. So we want to try to draw them in and engage them even before they become paying customers a lot of times. Let's see, Brittany, how do you balance when you should moderate and facilitate a conversation in the community and when you should step out and let your customers own the conversation with each other? Another great question and something that we're actually currently working through. So I think if customers are asking technical questions, then we have a responsibility. If there's not an answer provided within 12 to 24 hours, we have the responsibility to step in and make sure that there's an answer provided to that question. In essence, what will happen in a user community is that some users will begin to use the community as a support channel. So you just really need to be attuned to that. Whether you want that to happen or not, it doesn't really matter. That's how your customers are going to start using the community. So you have to be ready to catch those items and make sure that questions don't go unanswered, because that's when people will begin to lose faith in what you're doing from a community perspective. But if it's a thought leadership type question, what we always try to do, and this Gain, Grow, Retain is predominantly a thought leadership community for the customer success space. And I hope you all join, by the way, if you haven't already, gaingrowretain.com. But we like those conversations to be between the members, and we're all members. We all consider ourselves practitioners, whether we were founders of it or not. So what I personally like to do as somebody who participates pretty heavily in the community, and Jeff does this as well, if somebody asks a question on a specific topic, we like to highlight other community members and sort of pull them into the conversation so that they can help answer that question. If we know that they've solved that particular problem or have walked up to that certain thing and they have a really interesting example of it. When we were in our early adopter program for Gain, Grow, Retain, one of our members posted this brilliant post on his executive sponsorship program within his company. And so I've always come back to that to whenever people have questions about executive sponsor programs, I point them back to that post and this individual as the person that they probably need to talk to. So it's all about raising other people up and giving them visibility within the community. It really helps drive engagement and keeps things fresh and flowing. Let's see here. Goodness, got a lot of questions. This is great. Give me a second here. What metrics are important to a community? How are you getting your team to focus? So to me, the really engagement, trying to find a metric that represents engagement is a really important thing. So how many people, we think of community very broad, as you heard me talk about. It's not just the online community, but how many people are participating in our office hours calls? How many people are listening to the podcasts? How many people are visiting the website and reading our blog posts and content? Even how many people are engaging on LinkedIn? But the deepest engagement that we can track is really in the online community. And so we're looking at things like new content creation, the number of new pieces of content being created per week, the number of responses to new pieces of content being created. So you're always looking to make sure there are no unanswered questions, like I mentioned a moment ago. So it's things like that about sort of how many people are looking and lurking, how many people are actually contributing. Those are some of the key indicators that we look at to see, how effective we're being at engaging our community at large. Let's see here. Got two more questions, and I've got about another minute, so I'll try to speed through them. So how do you convince leadership to start a community in your segment? This is a great question. I would say just start doing it and then show the results of what you're doing. Start rallying small groups of customers and then give some case studies and verbatims about how engaged those customers are. And then you might be able to garner more investment or more just mind share from your executive team around maybe investing more in that. So start small, grow from there. You sort of saw our story. That's exactly how we did it. And then last question is sort of a softball. Is Gain, Grow, Retain built on the RYG platform? It is, yes. It's the online platform, gaingrowretain.com, runs on RYG, and we're really excited to have it on the platform. Super robust platform. It's been around for about a decade now. So it's everything I've asked us to be able to do there we've been able to do. So thank you all for your questions. It was great to chat with you guys during the session. I hope you're enjoying the event and look forward to connecting with you all soon. Please connect on LinkedIn. Jay Nathan, Gain, Grow, Retain. Thank you.